The hall was silent when they brought it in. A dozen soldiers in heavy armor marched down the long corridor, rifles clutched tight, their eyes flicking nervously toward the center of their formation. In the middle walked a figure, small, silent, and chained at the wrists and ankles. Its head was bowed, its dark hair falling over its face. It looked like a child, maybe 14 or 15 years old, and yet every step it took made the soldiers around it shift uneasily. Even through the reinforced glass of the observation room, the instructors could feel it, an energy in the air, heavy and unsettling. Something about the way the creature moved, so calm and deliberate, made the veteran officers tense without knowing why. "That's it," Commander Vash asked, his voice uncertain. "That's the creature they've been warning us about." Instructor Havoc, an old soldier with scars across his face, grunted. "Don't let the size fool you. That thing killed 47 men on its homeworld before they captured it." The younger recruits standing nearby stared in disbelief. "It's just a kid," one whispered. Havoc's eyes narrowed. "No, it looks like a kid. That's the first mistake most people make." They led the prisoner to the center of the arena, a massive training chamber used to test new recruits against controlled threats. The audience was filled with instructors, military officers, and scientists, all eager to see the creature's abilities firsthand. "Today," Havoc announced, his voice echoing through the chamber, "we will observe Subject 17. This creature is considered one of the most dangerous biological entities ever encountered by the Galactic Guard. It is to be treated with absolute caution at all times." Behind him, a row of screens displayed terrifying reports. Collapsed cities, dead soldiers, destroyed war machines, all linked to the same being now standing quietly in the arena. "Dangerous?" a soft voice asked from the back. Everyone turned. A young woman stepped forward, her boots clicking on the steel floor. She wore the dark uniform of a tactical instructor, her hair tied neatly behind her head, and her expression calm and unreadable. This was Instructor Alara, newly assigned to oversee Subject 17's assessment. Havoc frowned. "Yes, dangerous, highly so." Alara's lips curved slightly, just enough to hint at a smile. "Dangerous to who, sir?" The question hung in the air like a spark in dry grass. Havoc stared at her, unsure how to respond. No one had ever asked it before. In the arena below, Subject 17 slowly lifted its head. For the first time, the crowd saw its eyes, deep human eyes, but with something behind them. Something ancient. Something that made even the most battle-hardened officers look away. Alara stepped forward to the railing, her gaze never leaving the figure below. "What's its story?" she asked quietly. Havoc sighed. "Born on Earth, that backwater planet in the Sol system, an experiment. Human genetic engineering mixed with alien DNA, they called the Project Apex. They were trying to create the perfect soldier." "And they succeeded," another officer muttered, "too well." Alara's eyes narrowed. "If it's human, why call it a creature?" "Because it's not human anymore," Havoc replied. "It's faster, stronger, and smarter than anything we've seen, and it doesn't feel fear, not the way we do." Down below, the test began. The chains were removed. Instantly, the atmosphere changed. Subject 17 did not move, did not react, but the soldiers in the observation booth shifted in their seats. The stillness was unnatural, like the silence before a predator strikes. "Release the drones," Havoc ordered. Dozens of training drones dropped into the arena, weapons charging. The crowd leaned forward as they opened fire, bright blue plasma bolts cutting through the air. Subject 17 moved. It was like watching a shadow come to life. One moment it was still, the next it was a blur, weaving through the storm of plasma with impossible speed. A bolt grazed its arm, but it didn't flinch. In seconds, it closed the distance and tore through the first drone with a single strike. Sparks exploded. Metal screamed. The room went silent again. One by one, the drones fell, dismantled, disabled, destroyed. Not a single shot hit its mark. Within a minute, the arena was quiet. The test, which should have lasted half an hour, was over. The recruits stared in stunned silence. Even Havoc, who had seen the creature's power before, felt a chill crawl up his spine. "That," he said quietly, "is why we fear it." But Alara's eyes softened. She had seen something else, something the others had missed. Subject 17 hadn't killed the drones. It had dismantled them, disabled them without unnecessary destruction. It had chosen not to kill. "Fear isn't the right word," Alara said. What you fear is what you don't understand. Havoc gave her a hard look. Are you saying you understand that? No, Ilara replied, her voice calm. But I think I want to. As the creature was led back into its containment cell, Ilara walked beside the guards, her gaze steady and curious. She stopped just before the door closed and spoke softly, not to the soldiers, not to the other instructors, but to Subject 17 itself. Do you understand us? She asked. The figure lifted its head slightly. For the first time it spoke, its voice low, quiet, and human. I understand fear, it said. I just don't feel it. The door slammed shut. The guards looked unsettled. Havoc muttered something about increasing security, but Ilara stood there, her heart beating faster. Because beneath the calm voice and the deadly strength, she hadn't seen a monster. She had seen a child, alone, afraid of nothing, and perhaps more misunderstood than dangerous. That night, as the academy lights dimmed and the halls fell silent, Ilara stared out the window at the stars. She remembered her own words, dangerous. To who? And now she felt the weight of them more deeply than ever. The galaxy feared what it didn't understand, and she was beginning to suspect that the real danger wasn't the creature in the cell. The real danger was what they might do to it next. The next morning, the academy was buzzing. Word of Subject 17's arena performance had spread like wildfire. Cadets whispered in the hallways, instructors exchanged uneasy glances, and even the highest-ranking officers walked with tighter steps. The creature, the experiment, had shown them just how easily it could outmatch everything they trusted to protect them. But Ilara wasn't thinking about fear. She was thinking about potential. She walked through the long, sterile hallway toward the containment wing, a small tablet tucked under her arm. Most instructors avoided this part of the facility unless they had to. But Ilara had requested daily access, something that had raised eyebrows among her superiors. You really think you can train it? Commander Havoc had asked her that morning. I don't think, she had replied calmly. I know. The door to Subject 17's cell hissed open, revealing the same bare chamber, white walls, reinforced steel door, no windows. The figure was sitting on the floor, its back against the wall, staring blankly ahead. It didn't react when she entered. Good morning, Ilara said softly. Silence. She stepped closer and crouched down a few meters away. Do you know why I'm here? Still nothing. I'm not here to test you, she continued. I'm here to talk. Finally, the figure moved. Its eyes, sharp, intelligent, and unsettlingly human, flicked up to meet hers. Talk, it repeated, as if tasting the word. Yes, Ilara said. About you, about us, about why everyone's afraid. The creature tilted its head slightly. Afraid. Yes, she said, not hiding the truth. They think you're dangerous. I am, it replied simply. Dangerous to who? She asked again, her voice gentle but firm. This time it didn't answer. For the next few days, Ilara visited the cell daily. At first, the conversations were one-sided, her speaking, Subject 17 silent. But slowly, like an animal learning to trust, it began to respond. Do you remember your name? She asked one morning. They called me Subject 17. Not that your name. A long pause. Lyra, it said finally, almost hesitantly. They called me Lyra before. Before what? Before the experiments, before they made me a weapon. The words pierced Ilara's heart. You're not a weapon, she said gently. Lyra's gaze was steady. That's all I've ever been. Each visit revealed more pieces of the story. Lyra had been born human, a girl from a small Earth colony. But she had been taken as a child, part of a secret government program to create a hybrid soldier. Her DNA had been fused with alien physiology, her mind reshaped, her body rebuilt. The result was a being stronger, faster, and deadlier than anything the galaxy had ever seen. But at a cost. They took my name, my family, my memories, Lyra whispered one day. They told me I was a tool, a weapon to win wars, and when I fought back, they called me a monster. Ilara felt anger rise in her chest, not at Lyra, but at those who had done this to her. They were wrong, she said firmly. You're not a monster. Then why do they keep me in a cage? Lyra asked quietly. Ilara had no answer. Weeks passed. What had started as cautious conversations grew into lessons. Ilara brought books, simple stories at first, then history, then philosophy. She showed Lyra images of Earth, of oceans and forests and cities filled with people. At first, the creature had looked at them with suspicion, but slowly something changed. One day, Alara found her standing by the reinforced glass, staring at a picture of a sunrise. "It's beautiful," Lyra whispered. "It's home," Alara replied. "Do you miss it?" Lyra asked. "Every day." They stood in silence for a moment before Lyra spoke again. I remember sunlight. I think I liked it once." The words were small, almost lost in the air, but they made Alara's chest tighten. Buried beneath all the programming, all the pain, there was still a piece of humanity left. And she was determined to bring it back. But not everyone shared her belief. "Your sessions are a waste of time," Havok said during a security meeting. "That thing is too dangerous to rehabilitate." "It's not about rehabilitation," Alara argued. "It's about understanding." "Understanding doesn't stop it from ripping a man in half with its bare hands," he snapped. "We should terminate the project before it's too late." Alara's voice was calm, but her eyes were cold. "If you're so afraid of what she might do, maybe the problem isn't her, maybe it's us." Havok stared at her. "You're too close to it." "I'm close to the truth," she replied. "And the truth is, she's not a weapon anymore, she's a person." That night, Alara returned to the containment wing. She found Lyra awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor, staring up at the ceiling. "They're going to kill me, aren't they?" she asked softly. Alara froze. "Who told you that?" "I hear them," Lyra said. "They whisper outside my cell. They say I'm too dangerous to live." Alara knelt beside the glass, pressing her palm against it. "I won't let that happen." Lyra stared at her hand for a long time before reaching out and placing her own palm against the other side. For the first time, she looked not like a weapon, but like a girl, scared, uncertain, and longing for something she didn't understand. "Why?" Lyra asked. "Because you deserve a chance," Alara whispered. "We all do." As she walked back down the hallway, Alara knew the storm was coming. The higher-ups were losing patience. They wanted results or an execution. But she also knew one thing with absolute certainty. Lyra wasn't the monster they feared. She was the mirror they didn't want to look into. And if the galaxy was afraid of her, perhaps it was because deep down they knew they had created something stronger than their hate and far more human than their cruelty. The council chamber was silent as Alara stood before the tribunal. A dozen high-ranking officers and scientists watched her from behind a long metal table. Their expressions were cold, distant, the faces of people who had already made their decision before she entered the room. "Instructor Alara," Commander Havok said formally, "your request for extended communication sessions with Subject 17 has been reviewed." Alara kept her voice calm, and "It's denied," Havok replied. "Effective immediately, all rehabilitation and psychological sessions are suspended." She felt her stomach tighten. Suspended, why? A gray-haired scientist spoke next. "Our intelligence suggests Subject 17's behavioral patterns are becoming unpredictable. The risk of a containment breach is rising. The Council has decided that continued interaction poses an unacceptable danger." Alara clenched her fists at her sides. "She's not becoming dangerous, she's becoming human. That's the point." Havok sighed. "This isn't about what you believe, it's about safety. The Council has authorized the final phase." Her heart skipped. "What final phase?" "Termination," Havok said flatly. "The order has been signed. Subject 17 will be neutralized within 72 hours. The words echoed in Alara's mind long after she left the chamber. Termination. Neutralized. They used cold, clinical words, but she knew what they meant. They were going to kill her. That night, Alara couldn't sleep. She paced her quarters, replaying every conversation she'd had with Lyra, every fragile smile, every moment when the girl had shown a spark of who she once was. All of it gone, erased by people too afraid to see beyond their fear. By dawn, she had made her decision. If the Council was going to end Lyra's life, she would not let it happen quietly. When she entered the containment chamber that morning, Lyra was sitting in the corner, humming a tune, a melody Alara had taught her from an old Earth song. It was haunting and beautiful, and it made the instructor's chest ache. "You look worried," Lyra said softly, glancing up. Alara swallowed hard. "I have to tell you something. They've made a decision." Lyra didn't move. Termination. The word cut through Alara like a knife. "Yes." "I knew," Lyra whispered. "I felt it." Her voice was calm, too calm. Alara expected anger, fear, desperation. Instead, there was only resignation, like someone who had lived their whole life waiting for this ending. "Do you care?" Alara asked, almost breaking. Lyra lifted her gaze. "I care, but I'm not surprised. People fear what they don't control, and they can't control me." "You don't have to let them do this," Alara said, stepping closer. "You can fight." Lyra's lips curved slightly. "If I fight, they'll say they were right. If I surrender, they'll still kill me. Either way, I'm the monster they always wanted me to be." "Then prove them wrong," Alara whispered fiercely. "Show them you're more than what they made you." For the first time, something flickered in Lyra's eyes, not anger, not hatred, but hope. A tiny spark, fragile but alive. "Will you help me?" she asked. Alara didn't hesitate. "Yes." The next 2 days were a blur of planning. Alara knew the security systems inside and out. She studied patrol schedules, guard rotations, emergency protocols. She forged access codes and rerouted surveillance loops. Every risk she took brought her closer to ruin, but she didn't care. She had one mission: save Lyra. On the night before the termination order was to be carried out, Alara made her move. The corridor lights dimmed as she approached the containment chamber. 2 guards stood watch outside, but they recognized her and stepped aside without question. Inside, Lyra was waiting, not sitting this time, but standing, eyes fixed on the door like she had been expecting her. "Are you ready?" Alara whispered. Lyra nodded. "I don't know what's waiting for me out there." "Freedom," Alara said. "Or death," Lyra added. "Maybe both," Alara admitted, "but at least you will choose." They moved quickly. Alara disabled the internal locks and led Lyra down a maintenance corridor few people ever used, but their escape was short-lived. "Stop right there," a voice roared. Havoc stood at the end of the hallway, flanked by armed soldiers. His face was hard, but there was something else in his eyes: disappointment. "I expected this from her," he said, nodding toward Lyra. "But from you, Alara, treason." Alara stepped forward. "Call it what you want, I call it doing what's right." "She's a weapon," Havoc snapped, "and weapons don't belong in the wild." "She's not a weapon," Alara shouted. "She's a person." Lyra remained silent, but her hands were trembling. The soldiers raised their rifles. Red targeting lasers danced across her chest. "Don't move," Havoc warned. "If she takes one step, we fire." Alara looked at Lyra, her heart pounding. "Don't," she whispered, "please." But something had changed inside the girl. For the first time, she wasn't thinking like a weapon. She was thinking like someone who wanted to live. She took a step. The hallway erupted with chaos. Alarms blared, weapons fired, but none of it mattered. Lyra moved like a storm, faster than their eyes could follow, stronger than their guns could stop. She disarmed the soldiers without killing them, knocking them unconscious one by one. In less than 30 seconds, the hallway was silent again. Havoc staggered to his feet, staring in horror. "You see," he screamed, "this is why she must die." Alara stepped between them. "No, this is why she must live, because even now, even when you tried to kill her, she didn't kill you." Havoc stared at the unconscious guards. Lyra stood motionless, chest heaving, eyes filled not with rage but with tears. "I don't want to be what they made me," she whispered. "I just want to be free." Alara placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we keep moving." They disappeared into the night, alarms echoing behind them. The academy went into lockdown. Search teams flooded the corridors, but by the time they sealed the exits, Subject 17 was gone. And so was the instructor, who had refused to see a monster. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt wind against her skin, real wind, not recycled air. She looked up and saw the stars. They weren't just lights in the sky, they were possibilities. And for the first time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, she was more than what they had made her. The stars stretched endlessly above them, cold and brilliant. For the first time in her life, Lyra stood under the open night sky with no walls, no bars, no cameras watching her every move. The air was sharp and cold, the wind brushed against her skin, and she inhaled deeply as if tasting freedom itself. "Is this what it's like?" she asked softly. Alara smiled faintly. "It's a small part of it. Freedom is bigger than the sky." Lyra looked up again, her eyes wide with wonder. "It feels strange." "It's supposed to," Alara replied gently. You've lived your whole life in a cage. It will take time to learn how to breathe out here. But they didn't have much time. The Galactic Guard had already sealed the planet. Patrol ships scoured the skies. Ground drones scanned the forests. Every camera and sensor was tuned to one purpose: find Subject 17 and the traitor who helped her escape. For 3 days, they hid in the wilderness, moving at night, resting during the day, always staying ahead of the search teams. Alara's military training helped them survive. She knew how to read sensor sweeps, how to avoid detection, how to track patrol movements. But it was Lyra's instincts that kept them truly safe. "Stop," Lyra whispered one night as they climbed a rocky ridge. Alara froze. "What is it?" "They're ahead, 4 soldiers. 2 drones," Lyra murmured, pointing toward a cluster of trees nearly a kilometer away. Alara frowned. "I don't see anything." "You won't," Lyra said, "but I can feel them." It wasn't arrogance. It was simply true. Her altered biology had gifted her senses no human could match: heat signatures, sound frequencies, electromagnetic pulses. She could feel danger before it even appeared. Alara placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we go around, quietly." Lyra nodded. Despite their caution, the net around them was tightening. Every day the guard's search grew more precise. Patrols passed closer. Scans swept deeper. They were running out of time and places to hide. "They're getting smarter," Alara said one night as they rested by a small fire hidden beneath a cliff overhang. "They're afraid," Lyra corrected. Alara chuckled softly. "You're not wrong." "Why do they hate me?" Lyra asked after a moment, her voice small. "I didn't choose this. I didn't ask to be made this way." Alara's chest ached. "Because they don't understand you, and people always fear what they don't understand." Lyra stared into the fire. "I understand fear. I lived inside it for years, but this," she gestured at the stars above them, "this is worse. I don't know what to do now." "You live," Alara said firmly. "You find out who you really are, not what they made you to be. That's how you fight them." The girl looked up, her eyes reflecting the flames. "And if they find us?" "Then we fight back," Alara said simply. On the 4th night, the fight found them. They were moving through a narrow valley when Lyra suddenly stopped. "They're here," she whispered. "How many?" Alara asked. "Too many." A spotlight blazed from above, flooding the valley in harsh white light. Gunships roared overhead. Soldiers dropped from the sky, surrounding them in seconds. Lyra and Alara stood back to back, trapped in a ring of armed troops. "End of the line," a voice boomed through a speaker. "Surrender now and you will not be harmed." Lyra's heart pounded. She could fight. She wanted to fight. But she remembered Alara's words about choices, about humanity. Killing them would only prove their fears right. "Lyra," Alara whispered, "listen to me. You don't have to kill anyone, you just have to survive." Lyra closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, she moved. What followed was not a battle. It was a dance, fast, graceful, terrifying. Lyra dodged plasma bolts, disarmed soldiers, dismantled drones. She moved like liquid shadow, always one step ahead, always careful not to kill. The soldiers tried to pin her down, but she was everywhere at once, flipping over walls, leaping across craters, vanishing into smoke. Alara fought too, using her training to disable troops and cover Lyra's movements. Together, they carved a path through the encirclement. But the guard had come prepared. A containment unit, a massive mechanical suit designed to capture superhumans, crashed into the valley with a thunderous boom. It unleashed a magnetic pulse that dropped Lyra to her knees, pain exploding through her veins. "Lyra," Alara screamed, rushing to her side. "Run," Lyra gasped. "I can't." "No," Alara said, her voice trembling. "I'm not leaving you." The containment unit advanced, energy shackles unfolding from its arms. Lyra struggled, but the pulse was too strong. Her limbs felt like lead. She watched helplessly as the machine closed in. Then something inside her snapped. It was not anger. It was not hate. It was something deeper, the primal will to survive, the human instinct to live. The energy in her blood roared to life. The magnetic field shattered. The ground cracked beneath her feet as raw power surged through her body. The containment unit fired its shackles. Lyra caught them midair and crushed them like paper. "Target destabilizing," shouted a soldier. "We're losing control." Lyra stood slowly, her eyes glowing with a light they had never seen before. For the first time, the hunters felt fear. I am not your weapon, she said, her voice steady and clear. And I am not your enemy. She turned and unleashed a pulse of energy that swept the valley. It didn't kill, it disarmed. Guns shorted out. Drones fell from the sky. The soldiers collapsed, stunned but alive. When the silence returned, only two figures stood in the dust, Alara and Lyra. You did it, Alara whispered. Lyra's breath was ragged. No, we did. They fled before reinforcements could arrive. Hours later, far from the battlefield, they rested beneath a canopy of alien trees. Alara tended to Lyra's wounds while the girl stared up at the stars, her expression unreadable. Today you weren't a weapon, Alara said gently. You were a person, a protector. Lyra looked at her with quiet determination. Then maybe I can be more. Alara smiled. You already are. For the first time, Lyra believed it. And somewhere deep inside, beyond fear and hatred, a new truth was being born, one that would shake the galaxy. The creature they had feared was not their enemy. She was their future. News of the battle in the valley spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Military channels were flooded with footage. Soldiers disarmed in seconds, war machines disabled without a single casualty, and a girl standing alone against impossible odds. Not as a monster, not as a weapon, but as something far more powerful. To the Galactic Guard, it was a humiliation. To many others, it was a revelation. For the first time, people saw Subject 17, Lyra, not as a danger, but as a symbol. The creature they had been told to fear was capable of mercy. The weapon they had been taught to hate showed restraint. And the girl they had tried to erase from history now had a face, a name, and a story that was spreading beyond their control. Deep in the forests of Corin Prime, Lyra and Alara watched the chaos unfold from a hidden shelter. A small holoscreen buzzed with news broadcasts and intercepted transmissions. They're terrified, Alara said, scrolling through the reports. Every station, every government, every council meeting, they're all talking about you. Lyra stared at the screen. On it, a reporter was speaking. Some call her a threat, others call her a miracle. Who is Subject 17, and why did she spare them? Miracle, Lyra repeated softly. They used to call me a monster. They still do, Alara said, but now they're also calling you something else, Hope. Lyra's brow furrowed. I don't want to be Hope, I just want to live. Alara smiled gently. Sometimes, living is the most hopeful thing you can do. Their quiet days didn't last long. The Guard's search had intensified. Satellites combed the skies, drones swept the forests, and bounty hunters were already being dispatched. They had become the most wanted fugitives in the galaxy. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the forest, Alara sat by the campfire, staring into the flames. Lyra sat opposite her, knees pulled to her chest. Do you regret it? Lyra asked suddenly. Helping you, Alara shook her head. Never. You lost everything. Your rank, your future, they'll hunt you too. I knew the moment I opened that cell door that I'd never go back, Alara said. But I also knew that leaving you there, letting them kill you, would haunt me for the rest of my life. Lyra was silent for a long time. Then she whispered, no one ever chosen me before. Alara looked up. Then let me be the first and the last if I have to. Days turned into weeks. They traveled from world to world, always running, always hiding. But something strange began to happen. Everywhere they went, whispers followed them. On one mining planet, a group of workers refused to turn them in, even when offered a reward. On another, a local doctor treated Lyra's injuries without asking questions. On a backwater moon, an old family gave them food and shelter, whispering, You're not the monster they said you were. Lyra didn't understand it. Why are they helping us? Because they see the truth now, Alara said. They see the fear they were taught was a lie. Or maybe, Lyra murmured, they're just tired of being afraid. But while hope was spreading among the people, the halls of power were boiling with anger. In a dark chamber on the capital world of Virene, the High Council met in emergency session. Holograms of the galaxy glowed above the table, red markers showing where sightings of Lyra had been reported. She's becoming a symbol, one counselor hissed. If we don't stop her soon, we'll lose control. Then we don't stop her, another said. We erase her. We erase everything, the data, the recordings, the witnesses. History will forget her. And if she shows herself again? Then we make an example of her, the counselor growled. We show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us. One night, while hiding in the ruins of an abandoned research station, Alara found Lyra standing outside, staring at the stars. "You're thinking about them again?" Alara said quietly. Lyra nodded. "The ones who made me, the ones who called me dangerous." "Do you hate them?" Lyra took a deep breath. "I don't know, part of me wants to destroy everything they built, but another part," she hesitated, "another part pities them." "Why?" "Because they're so afraid," Lyra whispered. "Afraid of me, afraid of losing control, afraid of the idea that something they created might be more than a tool." Alara placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not what they made you, you're what you choose to be." Lyra looked at her. "And what if I choose to fight back?" "Then I'll fight with you." The next morning they received an unexpected message. It was short, encrypted, and unsigned, but the meaning was clear. "We know who you are. We believe in what you are doing. Meet us at Orion's Reach. You are not alone." Alara's heart raced as she read it. "It's a resistance signal. They're real." "Resistance," Lyra echoed. "People who have been waiting for someone like you," Alara explained. "People who want to change the system." Lyra stared at the message for a long time. "Do you think they'll still want me if they know everything I've done?" "They already know," Alara said gently, "and they still sent the message." That night, as their small ship lifted off the surface and disappeared into the blackness of space, Lyra sat by the window, watching the stars slide past. She wasn't running anymore. For the first time, she was moving towards something. She thought of the millions of people who had been told to fear her. She thought of the children who would grow up hearing her name. And she thought of the possibility, small but real, that she could become more than the weapon they made her to be. Alara joined her by the window, and together they watched the galaxy stretch out before them. "What are you thinking?" Alara asked. Lyra smiled faintly. "That maybe the galaxy isn't afraid of me anymore. And if it still is?" Lyra's eyes hardened. "Then it will learn." Across the stars, the hunt continued. Armies mobilized, fleets prepared. The council tightened its grip. But everywhere they went, more and more voices whispered in the dark. "She's not a monster. She's hope. She's one of us." And with every whisper, fear lost a little more of its power. The journey to Orion's Reach took 7 days. 7 days of silence broken only by the hum of the ship's engines and the endless parade of stars outside their window. During those days, Lyra barely spoke. She sat alone for hours, lost in thought, staring out into the void as if searching for answers that refused to come. Alara watched her quietly. She had seen soldiers before battles, rebels before revolutions, but Lyra was different. This wasn't fear or doubt. It was something deeper, a struggle between who she had been and who she might become. On the 7th day, the navigation system beeped softly. "Approaching destination," the onboard AI announced. Ahead of them floated a massive space station, hidden in the shadow of a dying star. It was old, scarred, and heavily cloaked, invisible to most sensors. This was Orion's Reach, the rumored home of the Resistance. "Ready?" Alara asked. "No," Lyra said honestly, "but I'm here." They were greeted at the docking bay by a small group of armed figures, their faces covered by masks. The leader stepped forward, lowering his hood to reveal a scarred face and steady eyes. "You're late," he said. "Had a few close calls," Alara replied calmly. "I'm Alara, this is—" "We know who she is," the man interrupted, his gaze falling on Lyra. "And we know why she's here." Lyra shifted uneasily. "Then you know what I am." The man studied her for a long moment before nodding. "We know what they tried to make you. What matters now is what you choose to be." His words lingered in the air, heavier than any weapon. The resistance was nothing like Lyra expected. It wasn't an army. It was a scattered network of scientists, ex-soldiers, and civilians, people from dozens of worlds who had suffered under the Council's rule. Some had lost families, others homes, many everything. And yet they were united by one goal, to break the power that had controlled the galaxy for centuries. They showed her evidence, secret files, hidden recordings, reports of atrocities. The Council had not just created her. They had created many like her. Failed experiments, enhanced soldiers, biological weapons. Most were dead, some had vanished. "You're the only one who survived long enough to escape," said Kalen, the resistance leader. "And now you're proof of what they've done." Lyra's chest tightened as she scrolled through the files, images of children in cages, scientists experimenting on living bodies, soldiers reduced to numbers. They did this, all of this, she whispered, to win wars. To keep their power, Kalen said. They built their empire on fear, and you are the evidence that could tear it all down. The plan was simple and dangerous. The Resistance had been gathering data for years, but they needed something undeniable, something the galaxy couldn't ignore. Lyra's story, her very existence, was the key. If they could broadcast the truth, the experiments, the atrocities, the Council's lies, across every communication channel, people would rise, armies would rebel, the Council would fall. But there was a catch. They'll never let that signal go out, Alara said after the briefing. They'll cut every line, jam every frequency. They can try, Kalen replied. But we've built a transmitter strong enough to reach the entire galaxy. It's hidden on the surface of a forbidden moon. We just need to activate it. Lyra frowned. Then let's do it. Kalen hesitated. There's more. Once the transmitter is activated, it will trigger an automatic lockdown. No one near it will survive. The room went silent. Lyra stared at him. You mean whoever sends the signal dies? Yes, Kalen said quietly. And the only one who can do it, the only one who can bypass their security and survive long enough to start the sequence, is you. That night, Lyra stood alone in the station's observation deck, watching the dying star outside. The thought of death didn't frighten her, not anymore. She had faced death countless times, but this was different. This wasn't about survival. This was about choice. For the first time in her life, she had one. Alara found her there, silent and still. You're thinking about it. How could I not? Lyra murmured. They built me to destroy. Maybe this is how I fix what they broke. Alara's voice softened. You don't owe anyone your life. But don't I? Lyra turned to face her. They made me a weapon. They turned me into a symbol. If I can use that to end what they started, shouldn't I? Alara's eyes glistened. If you do this, you won't just end them. You'll end yourself, and I don't want to lose you. Lyra's expression softened. You gave me a chance to live. Maybe now I give everyone else that chance too. The next morning, she made her decision. I'll do it, she told Kalen. I'll send the signal. The Resistance leader studied her for a long moment, then nodded. We won't stop you, but we won't forget you either. Alara didn't speak. She simply walked forward and wrapped her arms around Lyra. It was the first time they had truly embraced, not as soldier and subject, not as teacher and student, but as family. Promise me something, Alara whispered. If there's a way to survive, you take it. Lyra smiled faintly. I'll try. The mission was set. In 3 days, they would launch for the Forbidden Moon. The Council was already mobilizing fleets to crush the Resistance, unaware of what was coming. Across the galaxy, whispers turned into shouts, fear turned into defiance. The tide was shifting. As Lyra prepared for the final step, she found herself standing before a mirror, a rare, fragile thing. She stared at her reflection, at the face that had been called monster, weapon, threat. And for the first time, she saw something else. A girl, a person, a choice. She didn't know if she would live or die, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would no longer let others decide who she was. That night, as the ship hummed, and the stars drifted silently by, Lyra whispered to herself words she had never spoken before. I am not afraid. And for the first time, they were true. The Resistance ship Aurora moved silently through the void, hidden under a cloak of stolen technology. Its destination loomed ahead, a small, dark moon orbiting the red gas giant known as Tyros 7. It was barren, lifeless, and uninhabitable. But buried deep beneath its surface was the most important machine in the galaxy, the signal core. Once activated, it would pierce through every firewall, bypass every jammer, and broadcast the truth, the experiments, the torture, the lies, to every corner of known space. It would expose the Council for what it truly was. It would change everything. But it came with a cost. Lyra stood by the viewing window, her reflection faint against the backdrop of stars. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was calm, yet her heart was heavy. The closer they came to the mission, the more real it became. Still sure about this? Alara asked, stepping up beside her. Lyra nodded slowly. I've never been more sure of anything. Alara tried to smile, but her voice trembled. You don't have to prove anything, not to me, not to anyone. It's not about proving anything, Lyra said softly. It's about ending it, all of it. She turned to face Alara fully. You once told me that I could choose who I wanted to be. I've made my choice. They landed under the cover of darkness, far from the Council's sensor range. The team consisted of only 5, Alara, Lyra, Kalen, and 2 resistance technicians. It was a small strike group, but stealth was more important than strength. The underground facility was ancient and cold, filled with dust and silence. Its walls hummed faintly with dormant power. Lyra walked ahead, guiding them through narrow corridors and security gates. The Resistance's data was correct. Only someone with her unique biological code could bypass the final locks. At the heart of the complex stood a colossal chamber, the signal core itself. It was a towering spire of alloy and crystal, glowing faintly with sleeping energy. At its base was a control panel, designed for one user. Once you start the sequence, there's no turning back, Kalen reminded her. You'll have about 2 minutes before the system overloads, long enough to complete the broadcast, but not long enough to get out. Lyra nodded. I understand. Alara swallowed hard. Then we find another way. There has to be another way. There isn't, Kalen said quietly. She's the only one who can do this. Alara's voice broke. No, I won't let you die. Lyra stepped closer and gently took her hand. You gave me life, Alara, not the one they built, but the one I chose. If this is how I use it, then I'm not dying, I'm living. Alarms blared suddenly. The ground shook. They found us, one of the technicians shouted. Through the dusty corridors, the sound of armored boots thundered closer. The Council's elite guard had arrived faster than anyone expected. There was no time left. They'll be here in minutes, Kalen said, drawing his weapon. We'll hold them off. Lyra turned back to Alara. Go with them, get out while you can. I'm not leaving you, Alara said fiercely. You have to, Lyra insisted. The galaxy will need people like you when this is over. Teachers, leaders, people who remember. Tears burned in Alara's eyes. I can't watch you die. Then don't watch, Lyra whispered, but believe. They held each other for a long, silent moment, mentor and student, mother and daughter, soldier and savior. And then with a trembling breath, Alara let go. Make them see, she said. I will, Lyra promised. The battle raged in the corridors as Lyra stepped into the core chamber. Red lights flashed. Sirens wailed. The floor trembled under explosions, but in the center of it all, she was calm. She placed her hand on the control panel. It scanned her DNA, recognized her code, and came alive with a low, rising hum. Authorization accepted, a voice said. Begin broadcast sequence. Yes, Lyra whispered. The machine roared to life. Data surged through conduits. Waves of light spiraled upward into the tower. Across the galaxy, signals began to break apart. Networks that had been locked for centuries were suddenly open. Screens flickered. Channels went silent. And then the truth began to speak. Images of the Council's crimes flashed across every screen, the children in cages, the experiments, the torture. Testimonies from survivors, evidence of lies. Files that had been buried for decades now poured into the public domain. The galaxy was watching, and it would never be the same. Contain her, shouted a voice as soldiers stormed into the chamber. Lyra turned. She was unarmed, surrounded, and exhausted. But she didn't move, she didn't run, she had already won. Plasma bolts screamed through the air. They struck the floor around her. One burned across her shoulder. She staggered but stayed on her feet. Do you know why you fear me? She asked, her voice steady despite the pain. Because you think power is what makes someone dangerous, but it is. She raised her eyes, glowing faintly now with the last of her strength. It's truth. Outside, Alara and the Resistance fought desperately to hold the line. They were losing badly, but it didn't matter anymore. Across the galaxy, people were watching. Ships were refusing orders. Soldiers were laying down their weapons. Colonies were declaring independence. And then, just as the chamber reached critical overload, a blinding light erupted from the signal core. The explosion consumed everything. The soldiers, the chamber, and Lyra. Hours later, when the dust settled and the moon was nothing more than shattered rock, Alara stood in the ruins, staring at the empty space where her student had stood. Kalen approached slowly. It worked, he said. The galaxy knows everything. The Council is falling. Alara didn't answer. Her chest felt hollow, her throat dry. She looked up at the stars, cold and silent, yet somehow free. "Do you think she knew?" Kalen asked quietly. Ilara nodded. She knew. Weeks passed, then months. Revolutions swept across the galaxy. Governments fell, new ones rose, and in every corner of every world people spoke the same name, not with fear but with reverence: Lyra, the monster they had feared. The weapon they had built. The girl who had chosen to be more. Her story became legend, not because she was powerful, but because she had used that power to give the galaxy a chance to be better. One night, under the same stars they had once stared at together, Ilara whispered into the wind. "Dangerous to who?" The stars did not answer. They didn't need to. The galaxy already knew.